Hey, this is Timur Sol. Now, this video will be a little bit different than my other videos. This is a fast forward video in which I build a whole mansion bottom up from scratch to the end. I will try to make it clear what I'm doing during the video. I hope to give you an impression that I hope to give you an image of how my process looks like, and maybe this will also make your process more interesting, or maybe you'll just find some inspiration in what you'll see. So let's just start up. Now, the building that I'm going to build is not big, not small actually. It will be mostly built from Forgotten Adventures assets, but I also use different assets from Arkenforge and Campaign Cartographer. The first thing that I always do is I build myself the background layer. So what you see right now is me using the tile noise feature to create a blended background. The second thing I usually do is create a floor or a pattern for me to understand visually where I want my building to be. I'm using the polygon tile tool to do that, as this is most probably the simplest way. Now, I'm not gonna stick with this floor later during the build. It's just something that gives me a clear impression of what I want to achieve. I'm building the walls using the straight line tool. This is for several reasons. As you notice, I'm just pushing the walls back and forth, and let's take a short break over here. Now, things like this will happen. This is not a game breaker, and this is not something that made me forced me to stop building this map, and you will see it in a moment. I do, however, acknowledge that you might find some errors and some bugs in the software, and it is normal, I believe. What you should be aware, I think, is that each of these bugs are meticulously hunted down by a whole lot of people that use the software, and Nathan, the main dev of Arkenforge, he hammers out a patch every second day and fixes the bugs one by one. So probably by the time you're gonna watch this video, there will be several patches already available, fixing smaller and bigger issues that arise. Back to us building. Now I'm checking what assets I exactly used by using Alt, and supplementing other additional assets using the search on the left hand side. I kind of like buildings that have more curves than straight edges. Straight edges would be easier, without doubt, but I feel like curvy walls and edges like these are more interesting. The reason why I'm not exactly paying too much attention to the fact that the floor is now half grass, half marble or half stone is that, as mentioned earlier, I'm not gonna stick with this floor later on. Now you can see the benefits of using the straight line over here. If some asset doesn't fit, I just copy it, and using the edit line points make everything fit a little bit more together. I'm not stuck with an asset being four squares wide, for example. I decide how wide the asset should be. Now, as you probably have seen, I've just deleted the floor right now, and now I'll be picking different types of floors. It's a good habit, I believe, to start bottom up, not to build things around and later supplement that with a floor, for example, or something. I'd rather build things that are on the bottom level and gradually go up. Now, for a second, you might have noticed that I've changed the line width to 155. Now, due to the fact that I bended a wall and made it curvy, the curves squish the wall a little bit. It's probably something in the regards of 5%, maybe even less, but it does make a slight difference. Now, I'm not a perfectionist to make that an ideal point to point, especially that the map is relatively medium in size, and nobody will notice that if you won't point it that out. Continuing with the floors over here, I'm roughly waving my hand over here. It's not that I have everything in mind. I don't have a plan for building this particular building. It's something that I do from my mind. Now, I do know my assets relatively well, and I do know, for example, that the Arkenforge grid and some of the assets from Campaign Cartographer or Forgotten Adventures have a specific size that they need to have when it comes to texture scale. And you can see over here that I experiment with the texture scale to make the pattern on the floor fit the grid above. And you will need, if you have your own assets like that, you will need to experiment a bit. It's not rocket science, it's just making things bigger, smaller, and so on. I know that this particular asset has it fits when you use the scale 6.51. It's just trial and error. And obviously, since it can be 651, it can be also 13.0.2. I'm using different types of floors in different parts of the building to make an impression that the building parts have different uses. I also believe that this makes the building more interesting when you explore it as a player. Now, I do like I do like a building when it has some elevation, so I always try to build some kind of stairs above, especially that, as you can see over here, the surrounding terrain is rather mucky and wet, so you might think that this is a must over here. You also see that I'm trying to fit different types of assets. I'm deleting them, I'm making them again. Well, this is a normal trial and error. If I would have a perfect plan for this building, and if I would be building this from some kind of pre-made pattern, I would probably be much faster with it, but this is simply trial and error. So afterwards, after I have my floors over here, I'm building my walls. Now this wall is the inner wall, so I don't need it to be as thick as the outer walls. And again, I'm building it using the line tool, and I will later on fix any problems with the widths and so on. I'm pushing all the walls downwards, so it will be, so these walls, the inner walls, so they will be underneath the external walls. I'm also using corners, this time not round corners, as this is the interior and this would be impractical to have round corners inside any abode or home that you have. So using 90 degrees corners, and for example over here I'm also making space and place for doors that I will be using in these places. So you already see these holes. Now you don't see holes for windows, and that's not because the building doesn't have any windows. That's because I usually set my windows above the wall terrain, and I don't need specific holes for for that. Going back to the entrance, I'll try to put something over here that looks more representative, and slowly I'll proceed to decorating the interiors. Now the next step is making some lines in specific places that would create an illusion of creating places that lines that give you a clear impression that this is a different place, that you are in a different level, even if there are no doors over there. The small library that I set up here is also something that is worth noticing, I believe. I almost never use assets like these with symmetrical snapping order. Now the central part over where the book stand is, well, that is symmetrical and it is in the middle exactly, but notice that I always slightly rotate the bookshelves so they don't look unnaturally even. That's not something, the symmetry is not something that is so common in human societies and exactly in the human environments. We are messy creatures, so we do mess up a lot. This is me using the polygon tool, line width 1. This is the shadow asset, and I'm trying to trace the wall. Since this is only the shadow asset, I'm not exactly scared that there's going to be some discrepancies on the corners or edges, since this will go in a second, and you'll see it in a few seconds. This will go underneath the wall after I finish with the additional assets that I'm using over here. Once the assets are underneath the wall, I change the line width to 2 and back to 1.5, and now I have clear assets that show me that clear shadows that show me that the wall casts a thick dark shadow. And again, this is something that you might use in your own games or own map making. Shadows always catch your eye. If something is in the shadow and it has a bigger contrast, it's something that is visually appealing to you. What you see right now, what I'm doing is I'm using again the black dot gradients, and I'm just stretching them out to make additional shadows in additional rooms. Sometimes I'll be using the lines. If I have a very straightforward thing to do, I'll be using the line tool, since it's a little bit easier than squishing smaller assets or stretching them left and right. You also notice that I'm snapping everything to my grid. This is relatively easy to explain. With the grid snapping, I'm sure that the black asset of the shadow will be underneath the wall objects that I have over here. I'm also giving shadows to every bookshelf over here, and as mentioned earlier, I tend to give shadows to every object that I want to be more eye-catching than regular. Now the next thing is creating carpets, and again building the thing from bottom up. I sometimes omit this step, like for example I built the bookcases before I put the shadows over there. It depends actually. Sometimes when I have a good idea, or I think I have a good idea, I just do it impulsively, I think, oh, this is a good place for couches to be, so I'm gonna put the couches right now. Although probably I should be focused on something else. It's not like if you break the rule, it's something bad's gonna happen. Actually, on the contrary, rules are made to be broken, but only if you try to keep them. That's what I would say. Now, there's a really nice coffee table in the sci-fi assets right now, which I'm going to use to make a small meeting place. And I also believe that stuff is in the little details, so small splatters. This is also something that I probably haven't yet explained or haven't yet showed. If you have blood splatters like these, and there's a million of blood splatter assets around web, you can use those as other types of splatters. For example, I'm going to lower the brightness here, lower the saturation and the opacity to make something like a smear of oil or something else to just make the place look more natural. Using the shift, I'm gonna create some chests over here. Multi-selected chest, holding control, you select the chests. Afterwards, you hold your shift and click in different places. You have assets of different sizes and different rotations. You don't have to care or worry about them looking very neatly stacked. These chests over here are supposed to hide the trapdoor behind, and that is what they are. And that is what they are doing. Using again my hue shortcut or hue hotkey, I made the chests all look the same, meaning color. Since holding the shift changes the color, I wanted to revert the color to 50, so I selected the chests, pushed my F1 hotkey, brought up the hue manipulation and set it to 50, which is the standard for Arkenforge. Again, fiddling a little bit with the shadows. I noticed that the shadow is probably a little bit too much, and this is another shadow asset. This takes a lot of time, I'm gonna be honest, and it's probably not the best way to do it, but it's the way I do it right now. A quarter shadow that is brilliant for corners. Although in each corner you have to set it up manually and push it under the walls. Now, if I would know earlier where the walls were, I would probably be able to use these assets earlier and not have to push them behind the wall. But well, we all make mistakes, and that's a known fact. These assets are mainly used for situations in which you have corners that have 90 degrees. In other cases, I would use the rectangular shadow asset. And you can already see, for example, over here that near the entrance there are shadows that are gathering around, and in the corners of the room, central room with the rug, there's also shadows that indicate that this is a place where there's maybe not enough light. Now I'm setting up doors, and again, doors are sometimes problematic. I was figuring out whether I should use a metal door or some other types of doors. I went with an arch from a castle and a metal door underneath. Now I could probably leave some doors open, but I'm not exactly sure if this is a place where I wanted that. I think I rather wanted this building to be all locked up and inaccessible. Maybe the adventurers or the party is invited for a dinner, but it's prohibited to enter any other premises that you have here. Maybe there are some mysterious mysterious notes or something like that inside the home. Maybe they need to go to the library, and that's up to the DM to decide. And again, I'm using some asymmetrical design to make the things look a little bit more natural. If you're building a medieval or a semi-medieval house, don't forget about the toilet. It's always something that makes me laugh a little bit when I see big taverns or big buildings without any facilities like these, without any places where one could wash yourself or something like that. Now, going back to what I'm doing right now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not using holes for windows. I just built the wall all around the place. Now, what I'm doing right now is I'm using stone slabs to make places for those windows. Now, how I envisioned this place is that it's rather inaccessible, just like that from the outside. So what I wanted to do is not only have windows all around, I also wanted to have the windows, let's call them less accessible than in a normal building. And again, since I zoomed out, I noticed a few places need additional shadows, so I'm just going back to that step. And now I have an asset called bars. These are simply metal bars that are top down, built with a top-down view. I'm building them in front of the windows that I will put here in a minute. I believe that things are in the details. The details like these are important. You can easily work with lights, having bars like this. If you have a manner like this, you can have your adventurers stealthily come up to the place and not allow them to enter unless they have any way to get rid of the bars. So that's something that I find important to do. Now, I'm also searching for smaller things, and as mentioned earlier, I'm not exactly sure what I'm building here. I'm just building things from top of my mind, and this is why you also see this back and forth all the time. I'm constantly reconfiguring what I'm building over here. Over here, for example, you've seen that there's problems with shadows, with layering. I didn't probably do the best to lock objects when I was supposed to do that. I have a feeling that I could have done a better job over there, and maybe group objects a little bit more. Sometimes when I build something, I need to push it off the screen and build it over there to have better visual perspective on stuff. Now I have the office almost ready. Just adding some furniture, pushing in underneath the shadows. This is also interesting. Notice that the furniture on the upper part is covered partially in shadow. The one that I'm putting right now down is not. I'm constantly using my hotkeys to manipulate the layering over here. If I see that something is on a bad layer, I use one of my hotkeys to move it up by one, down by one, or to the bottom or to the top. Now, I didn't talk much about hotkeys per se. I talk a lot that I use them, but I do feel that that's something that each individual user has to do by himself or by themselves. It's not something that you can just copy from a different user. I have my image manipulations on the F keys, for example, mostly, but you might need more soundscapes over there. So there's that. Now I'm getting back to the library, and with a relatively fresh view, I'm changing some stuff over here so that it looks a little bit more comfy or more habited. and not just left alone. And basically what I'm doing right now is I'm making sure that there are no two empty spots left here and there. And again, some layering problems that are dealt with a click F9 or F10 in my case. Since I noticed that this place relatively is left alone, I decided to also use this place for setting up a piano. I like slightly cluttered venues where there's a lot of things happening. It gives the DM a better idea and better a broader possibility to interact with the object. So for example, if you look over here, there are notes on the desk, but there are also notes in the bin next to the chair that are half burned. This is something that I like to add to my maps to give small incentives for the players to use. Now, to be fairly honest, I have a lot of assets, and if you would be building a map like this, it might take you a little bit longer. It might be not so robust. Keep in mind that I am kind of a map making maniac, and I really do care about the quality of assets I'm using and the integrity of the maps that I am building. But this map took me roughly around, I believe, 2 hours of time, condensed into these 20 something minutes of video. And here it is. I believe it came out quite nice. There's a basement you can explore that is on the right side. The entrance is on the right side. From the bathroom you can hear some voices from the grate on the ground, and there are notes to be retrieved from the office. There's a bottle of some liquor underneath the bed on the left side. Stains on the floor underneath the carpet suggest that there's something might be happening over there, and a huge library from which you can obtain hidden knowledge. I do like this map a lot. Well, maybe not a lot. I do like this map, and I find that it's a relative success. I did implement most of the things that I've shown you during the tips series before. This does not mean that the tips series is over. I'll be doing more of those, but I also wanted to show you a whole process of map making in my edition. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you around.